Ka pai o, ka timata pēr I tā tātou, tā tātou wānanga I te rangi nei, te karakia, no reira, ka karakia tātou. Ka inui. Mānawa mai e te rangi e tū nei, mānawa mai e te papai raro nei, mānawa mai e ngā mākuru o te rangi, o te whenua, tui au o tātou whakaaro, tui o tātou here, kia mau, kia ita, kia puta ki te whaiau, ki te amarama, whano, hara mai te toke, haumi e, hui e, tai ki e. Nau mai raro mai tātou katoa, I raro I tēnei kaupapa o tātou whakatata mai, whakarongo mai, taringa are mai ki tēnei pāpāho o tātou, e mihi nei, tēnā rā tātou. Just a warm welcome to everyone that's joined us this morning, those from afar, those from all different organisations who have come in this morning. I just wanted to, shed some light on today's kaupapa, the purpose of our Practice Foundation. So just wanted to mihi to everyone as well. We have our rōpū here for Practice Foundation. You'll see in the background we have Penny, we have Lee in the background organising all of the stuff. We've also got some manuhiri, Kelly as well, sorry. We've got manuhiri as well that would shed some light on this morning, shortly after. But e mihi ana kia tātou katoa, those that have joined us this morning. So we just wanted to talk about this morning. So we've got Jackie Chan also, that's part of our Practice Foundation team, who will be doing our illustrations for 2025 series. Jackie is unfortunately not able to attend this morning. However, the illustrations will be published within today's recordings in the next 2 weeks. But thank you very much for that. The purpose of our Practice Foundation is to provide a space for those working in the public sector who are working in complex environments to come together with like-minded people. We'd like to acknowledge that this is a difficult time for many people, and we'd like to encourage and support everyone to take good care of themselves and each other as much as they can. We hope to find coming together today's session restorative. We'll see Kelly in the background. So Kelly is here. If you have any questions or any issues concerning today's session, feel free to reach out and send a message in our message forum. We also just want to let everyone know that we won't be allowing any bots Read AI to attend these sessions. This is in order to keep everyone in a safe space place for people to connect. If you're unable to attend, most of the sessions are recorded and can be watched online. So today's rhythm, today's purpose is place-based approaches offer a way to connect central policy and investment with local expertise and lived realities of whānau and hapori. We have manuhiri, which is tākuta or Dr. Ingrid Burkett from the Good Shift, Australia. We'll start the session by introducing different approaches that have been applied in Australia, in Aotearoa. She will then explore the value of an ecosystem approach that moves beyond service integration. This way of working sees place not just as a location, but as a living system with existing knowledge and know-how. We've also got a second manuhiri today, which is Rachel Smith, a manager of Healthy Families whānau, will then help us explore the opportunities and challenges of what this means in the context of being in Te Tai Tokero. So today's rhythm will be together joining in this 90-minute session. We'll do some whakawhanaunga at the start with the small breakout groups as we normally do, and then we'll hear from Dr. Ingrid Burkett. Then we'll go back into breakout groups for some shared reflection time. And then we'll hear from our second manuhiri, which is Rachel Smith from Healthy Families whānau, and then have a whole group Kōrero of opportunities and challenges about working from place within Aotearoa. So that's what our rhythm is going to look like today at whānau. You got a big one this morning. But what we're going to do now is go into whakawhanaungatanga breakout groups for the next 10 minutes. Here is the special pātai today, e hoa. So the pātai is, in what ways does place have a role or impact in your mahi that you do? Yeah, jot it down. We're also going to get Kelly to to drop it in the chat forum in case you need to look back at that pātai again. I'll just say it again one more time. In what ways does place have a role or impact in the mahi you do? Place being wāhi, location, all of those things. What does that look like for you? So we'll put you into your breakout groups to share that for the next 10 minutes. Ka pai no mai hoki mai. If I can please ask you to mute your mics. No mai hoki mai homa. We'll just wait a little moment for everyone else to join back. And here's hoping that everyone got the chance, the opportunity to share a lot about each other. Got to know one more thing more about each other. Good to see you on here, Sasha. Is everyone back? I think everyone is back. Ka pai. Well, no more hoki mai. Welcome back. What we're going to do now is I'm going to introduce our new Kōrero, our new puti puti. We have Dr. Ingrid Burkett as the co-director of the Good Shift, a woman-led for-purpose enterprise that scaffolds system innovation work that contributes to green and just futures. Ingrid draws from diverse fields, including finance, social work, and design, into a focus on systems innovation. Ingrid's research and work have contributed to the design of policies and processes across many fields, including procurement and impact investment. Ingrid is one of the key international collaborators working with many teams and change makers across Aotearoa. So no mai, haere mai, et puti puti, Dr. Ingrid Burkett. I'll let you take over, e hoa.
Thank you so much, Riri, and kia ora, everybody. It's lovely to be here, and I'm just going to share, I guess, some of the way that we've worked in place here in Australia. I'm calling in today from the lands of the Jinnaburra people on the outskirts of Meanjin, Brisbane. So, but I'm going to talk about work that we've done in Logan, which I think some people will be familiar with because lots of people have whānau in Logan. I've met lots of intersections as I've been working in Aotearoa over the years. So I'm going to share my slides and hopefully this will work. It's always a bit nerve-wracking having slides. Can you see those slides?
Looks good, Ingrid.
Great. So I want to start with saying that, we've had place approaches and working in place in Australia for a long time. So this is a little bit of a potted history of how government in Australia has invested in place approaches for 50 years. I've been around for most of those 50 years, although I have to say I was very, very young in the early part of this timeline. And, there's been a lot of great things that have come out of some of these examples, but you can have a look at this timeline and see that a lot of them are very short-lived. So they're for a particular period of time, and then they just disappear. And a lot of the communities where I've worked, where we've worked, they've experienced multiple of these place-based approach programs. And there's not much that's left after the program ends until the next time another program comes along. And so there's something that I think we can learn from this repetition of programmatic approaches to place in Australia that I think needs to be surfaced. And so I share this, you know, I'm coming from Australia. I'd love to know more about how this relates to what you've experienced in Aotearoa. I'm not suggesting that this is the answer. As you can see, we've got a potted history for a very long time where we haven't found some of those answers. It made me think a few years ago that, you know, we really need to understand what we mean by place as well. So many of these programs, they've got very different approaches to place. And I felt the need, especially now when there's a renewed interest in place, and we've just had a National Centre for Place-Based Excellence funded by the federal government. I started thinking, can we just spend a little bit of time making sense of what do we actually mean by place-based work, and what happens when everybody starts to work in place? What are they actually doing? So I started exploring what all of these different place approaches mean in the Australian context. And I thought I'd just share some of them. There's probably, I've uncovered about 8 different ways that, you know, people have started working in place. I'm just going to share 4 of them to see if any of them resonate with you and can help us to think about what it means to actually work effectively in place, and what could we do in place that would actually shift things. Because some of the places where I worked 25 years ago, you know, I really question what's changed in those places. How have the people in those places benefited from a place-based approach? So the one that is currently the approach that's currently takes the top dog position of being called place-based is in Australia is collective impact, and in that people start with outcomes. Where do they want to go? And they set up backbone organizations, and they focus really on data and action around a shared vision or impact. That approach currently has the most money sitting in it in the Australian context, but the jury is still really out in terms of, is that going to actually help things change in those places? The one that most people know, and you know, certainly that I grew up in my professional life with, is place as community, community development. And you know, I think, and I'm saying this as a former president of the International Association of Community Development, I'm really bitterly disappointed about how community development has itself become a program. It used to be quite a radical activity when I first started as a baby community development worker. And it was really focused on relationships and the importance of building relationships across people, and strengthening the asset base of communities. It is where I learnt developmental organizing, you know, that actually follows the pace of trust and relationship. But I feel like a lot of that has now been lost, at least in the Australian context, where every council has a community development section, but I don't see a lot of developmental work in those places. Sorry if I sound slightly critical. It's only because I'm getting older and I've got a longer time to look back on what we haven't done well, and a deep, deep passion for doing better. The 2 that I just want to spend a little bit more time on is what I call place-focused work, which I think dominates most of those programs that I showed you on that potted timeline. It's really code for service integration. And it starts with need, and it focuses on the multiple services that we have in place and tries to integrate and coordinate all of those programs that are funded in place to come together. So in Australia, we now have places that have like 8 hubs. where the services are integrated. Again, the jury is out. Do hubs actually work? Do they shift anything in communities, or are they code for efficiency and efficient alignment of services? I've set myself up to say that there's one that I think has more hope for me. And no, I don't want to suggest that this is an answer by any stretch. And again, the jury's out, but this is the one where I'm starting to see that we have the opportunity to really work with people, alongside people, in a context, because it starts with context, and to test and learn what works in different contexts through action and through learning. And it's this one that I just want to share one example of things that we're doing. We're working in about 4 different places using this to test whether or not, if we approach place as a system and an ecosystem, we can start to make some differences. So I'm going to take you to Logan, where I've worked for the last decade. It's an incredibly exciting place. There's 237 cultures in Logan. It's got really strong community infrastructure within those diverse communities. But it's also identified as, having a lot of challenges. So it's concentrated formal services, and there's a lot of service integration that's gone on in Logan. But there is, really variable impact of those concentrations of services. And in that, we've been working for the last couple of years around what does that mean if we're addressing issues like family violence. So the one of the testing grounds and the work that we're doing with local community members is around family violence. It's a really growing issue in not just in Logan, around the country. We have just enormous rates of family violence. We're working particularly with people who have been through the settlement process. So they've been in Australia for a couple of years, up to 5 years. They've gone through, they're mostly from refugee backgrounds. And what we've noticed is that in that community, and that the communities of communities, they're not actually reaching out to the formal services. So there's a gazillion hubs in Logan. I mean, at last count, I reckon I've counted 14 hubs, service integration hubs in Logan. And yet, when it comes to family violence, so many of these families are not accessing those services at all. They're not engaging with the formal service system at all. What we have noticed is that they are getting some assistance, though, through women community leaders. And the women community leaders are playing this role of supporting women going through family violence. They're actually helping in the recovery. They're reaching out to people who get left out, and they're turning up to try and help people navigate the system. They're filling in when the system falls short, and they're at the front line of the prevention system. So in Queensland, we spend something like 2.5% of the total budget for family and violence on prevention. If we look at the work that these women community leaders are doing, they are doing the work that no services are doing in that space, but they're doing it all without resourcing. They're on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They travel vast distances to support women in their communities, and they're doing that at risk to themselves, physical and emotional. Now, this is not a story that just happens in the family violence space. We've started to see this story in a lot of communities where we have particularly women community leaders really stepping up without the resourcing. So because we're exploring this as you know, in Logan, in a place with 237 cultural groups, we have started to look at how we can work alongside some of those community leaders. So we're currently working with about 32 women leaders to really understand what they are doing to make that visible in the system, and to start to explore what could happen if we all saw that as part of the ecology of support. So these women community leaders have incredibly deep relationships across their communities, and they're actively connecting women experiencing violence into supports within the communities. They're also very knowledgeable about the formal service system. So they help women to navigate the formal service system, which otherwise is often really inaccessible. And it's not just the violence, there's the family violence service system, it's all of the mainstream services and funding bodies that sit around the family violence. So some of the mainstream services don't ever see diverse families in coming up in their programs. But these women leaders help people to access and navigate that otherwise invisible service setting. So our goal really in approaching this place that women leaders are playing such a role in is to build and make visible an ecology of support. So what we're doing is working alongside those 32 women from diverse cultural backgrounds, and we're co-creating with them a platform. So yes, it's just a platform, but it's more than a platform, because what we're trying to do is to look at what do those women leaders do? What do they need? What role do they play? What do they actually need in that role? And how can that formal system start to really recognize the incredible role that they're playing, and resource that? So when we're talking about resourcing, we don't just mean funding, but we do mean funding. We would like to acknowledge that these women spend amazing amounts of time actually working in the system that is failing their communities. So how do we resource that? How do we resource particularly the prevention work that they do? Because if we're only spending 2.5% of the total budget for family violence on prevention, they're doing the work that funding is not reaching. So how do we fund that work that they do? But also they've identified for us and in the process that they'd like to have more training. They'd actually like to create training and deliver that into the formal service system. They've raised the question of language, and how do we create more resources in language? How do we create better pathways into mainstream services? How do they access the support and self-care that workers in the system in formal services actually get? And how do they access the legal support? So it's all of those resources. So we've spent the last year or so working with this group of 32 women. We're just about to launch the very first prototype of that system. We're seeing that this could be an example of place as system. It's just a very small prototype, but we see that the opportunity for this to create an ecology of support as something that goes way beyond this example and, you know, Logan as a place and these 32 women as the testing ground. And they're keen to be on that journey with us. So where does it work best? It works best when there's, you know, it's recognized that programmatic responses and funding programs aren't working. We have something like the minister told us the other day, 80 funded programs in Logan for family violence. And yet these women are not accessing any of those programs. So this is an example of how we can work in place when the programs are just not working. It works best when when responses require deeper understandings of context and culture and is really dependent on relational ways of working. And it works best when responses require engaging both the people who are experiencing the issues and who have clearly developed their own solutions, plus those who have resources. So alongside working with the women, we're also working with the CEOs of the resourced organisations because we think they can divert some of their funding into supporting this part of the ecology. And we're working with the policy makers at state level to explore how they could shift their policies. We're learning along the way, and for us, action learning is really important. So what that means is that we have continuous reflection, we're working in relationships, so those women are being resourced to work with us and alongside us. We have loops of learning and we share the insights and the knowledge that we're gaining from that to actively inform the better next steps. We don't have a destination in mind. We're learning as we're going, and but we think there are some really good early signs that we could actually start to shape an ecosystem rather than a service system for responding to these issues in Logan. That's my share. Thank you, Riri.
Tēnā koe, Ingrid. Thank you very much for that share. What we're going to do is we are going to go into a breakout group for 15 minutes. Now, this breakout group will consist of comparing and contrasting exercise. So looking at the two different approaches, place-focused versus place as system. Compare and discuss. These are the pātai here. What would we do differently if we treated place as a system, not just as a location? So I want you to think about a starting point, definitions of success, role of government agencies. We'll give you some time now to take a quick, we've got the photo there. So if you want to take a photo of this so that you're able to refer back into your breakout groups, or you can push print screen, and then add it to a Windows document so you can refer back to this slideshow of Ingrid's. This will help direct conversation within your breakout groups. Ka pai. So we'll also get Kelly. Kelly will also, she's added it already, to the chat forum in case you weren't able to follow those instructions of mine. So 15 minutes, share as much as you can regarding those pātai. What would you do differently if we treated place as a system, not just as a location? And think about the starting point, definitions of success, role of a government agency. Kia ora rā tātou, nau mai hoki mai. We'll just wait for everyone to jump back into our main session. I wonder if Kōrero was flowing in all those sessions of yours. No doubt. Ooh, we got some eyes opened and excited. Cool. We've still got a few more that are coming through. Haven't quite reached our number yet. Anyway, just in the meantime, whilst we wait for those that are joined us in this main session, I'm just going to ask you in the meantime to take a few minutes to jot down any thoughts or reflections, pātai into the chat forum, based on the kōrero that you've shared and what you'd like to dive into. So just add that into the chat forum, or any good gems that you thought were valuable and that you can share with the rest of us. Add that in the chat forum. We'll give you a few moments for you to jot that down or type that in the chat forum. Kapai, I'm going to ask you to continue if you want to jot down your whakaro or your gems in the chat forum for us all to have a read and gather. In the meantime, we've got a special manuhiri that's joined us this morning. He uri no Ngāpuhi nui tonu ki roto Waima, called Rachel Smith. Rachel Smith has been living in the whānau for most of her life. Rachel is passionate to see a thriving Tai Tokero, shaped by our people, for our people. Rachel brings a wealth of knowledge from her time as a councillor within the Far North District Council, with a focus of on places for people, community empowerment, and sustainability for our mokopuna. Now, Rachel is an interim manager at Healthy Families Far North, based in Te Kerikeri. So, ka hoa tu te rākau kōrero ki a koe e te whanaunga e te hoa, Rachel.
E piti ana ki a koe e hoa. Tēnā tātou katoa. So good to see everybody today. Oosh, what an epic presentation this morning, hey, from Ingrid. And thank you for your kōrero and for bringing your mātauranga across the ditch, for lack of a better word, and into our space here today. Really, thank you for that introduction. Ko waio, ko Rachel Tokuingwa, he uri aho o Ngāpuhi, and I am incredibly privileged to hold the space of interim manager with Healthy Families Far North at the moment. One of the things that really struck me from Ingrid's kōrero today was the importance of relational approaches in context, and that really helped to ground me and celebrate the mahi that we get to do in the context of the Far North and how we get to do it. So if I ground us in the context of Tai Tokero of the Far North, you know, it takes us 4 hours to drive from the top to the bottom of our district. We have a population of around 75,000 people, spread across 42 plus communities, and the richness and diversity that exists across those communities is really easy to see. But what also is really easy to see is the variance of socioeconomic. You can drive 10 minutes either direction and go from some of the wealthiest properties in the country into visible deprivation that a lot of New Zealanders can't imagine actually exists inside of our country. So Tai Tokero is an incredibly diverse and rich place to be living, to be grounded, and to do our mahi. But when I think deeper about the context of this place, it makes me really appreciate the importance of the cultural context. Tai Tokero is not just this place of people today, but it's the birthplace of our country. The richness and depth of kōrero tuku iho that exists across the Far North is phenomenal. And when I ground that back into our mahi, what we have learned at Healthy Families over the last few years is the importance of laying that foundation of cultural context, of learning our kōrero tuku iho, going into our places, and rather than asking what are the needs, what are the challenges of this place, it's what is the story of this place? How do we start from that foundation of the story of our place and use that as a springboard into those opportunities through relationships and building the depth of impact? Because what we've learned through our prototyping is that when we start from that foundation of story of place, we accelerate and we deepen the impact, especially for our whānau Māori. We ground into a place of belonging and of strength rather than recognising the challenges first and foremost. So we're really lucky at Healthy Families to be able to work in this way. And one of my reflections that I shared earlier is that when you've drunk the Kool-Aid, it's really hard to unsee what you've seen, hey? So when you know place as an approach, when you know place as a system, you forget that that's not normal. And so today has been really helpful for me to be reminded that it's not normal and that there are so many small epic shifts that we can be making towards that approach of place. When I think about it in the context and get down a level into our mahi, I think about a piece of mahi that actually Riri has led for us across Healthy Families over the last few months, where she was able to work with local tai tamariki to support systemic resource to be allocated in a way that was more fit for purpose. There was a pool of money that was coming into Te Hiku, into Muri Whenua, that was intended to support our young people, our tai tamariki, to be active. And that approach was going to be the same old approach that we see across the motu, hey? It's how do we give this money to sports clubs so that they can lift their numbers and participation? How do we give this money to our RSTs so that they can be out there having hui, 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 hui? And through Riri's mahi, she was able to get in there and disrupt and shift and surface tai tamariki to the design of that, where actually they said, actually, the people that we know, our mates down the road, they don't need to be participating in sports clubs. Some of them might do, but actually our mate up the road, he needs a saddle for his horse in order for him to be out there being more active. She needs a knife for when she goes diving so that she can collect her kaimoana, so that she's doing her active movement with purpose for her whānau. That is what active movement looks like for her in Te Kao. It's not about getting out there and playing rugby on the football pitch. So that really starts to contextualize the mahi that we are able to do when we get deep inside of our place. We understand the stories of our place, not just of our past, but our stories of today. And then we shift resource and power into the people who understand that place better than we do. Because I think that that's probably one of the challenges that Aotearoa will face when it comes to place as a system, is that the granular level that we need to be taking in order for this to be impactful doesn't match our data sets. It doesn't match our resource flows. It doesn't match the current infrastructure of systems. And so those are the things that we need to be exploring how to shift so that we can get right down into the surface of Te Kao, not into far north as a district, because that's not deep enough. Another one of my really great reflections from Ingrid's Kōrero this morning was around place-based programs being short-lived. And when I reflect on some epic mahi that we've been able to do with Far North District Council here, to address affordability, as many of our councils across the country did, our council had to dissolve our community development team. And while that seemed like a challenge at the time, what today has made me realise is how epic an opportunity that has been, because by working in partnership with our council, we've been able to support them to think across the organisation about place as an approach, relational first, deep impact place as an approach, rather than community development as a program. And so when we start to see them rolling that out through their policies and processes, their engagement, we start to really see the depth of impact, especially that it's having for our rangatahi and lifting our rangatahi, our tai tamariki, into those places of feeling really empowered. So that was a really great reflection for me today, is that community development is not a program, it's an approach that is relational and contextual. And again, through the places and spaces that we are all holding, it's another really epic small opportunity. Great pātai in the chat there, how has it changed their policies? We are still working on that policy shift internally. When we think about our 6 conditions of systems change, it's been about deepening the relationships and shifting the mindsets, opening their mindsets to understand what their opportunity is, so that that flows into their practices and resource flows and policies as our next step of change. So really looking forward to cracking into that space and hoping to make that impact really shortly. I just want to close off with a couple of challenges that I really see in the place-based approach for Aotearoa. One of them I've already touched on is our data sets and the granular level that is required for us to be making deep and meaningful impact. Currently, our data sets across Aotearoa do not match that. And in order for us to be making change, we've got to be matching that lived experience with the data sets. So I see that as a challenge that we all need to be collectively thinking about. One of the opportunities that I see, though, is that there seems to be a really massive desire across system. And I think that everybody who's in the room here today is an indication of that as well. How we build the infrastructure to support that at a systemic level is a really massive challenge that I think we can all be collectively thinking about. But if I close off with what I see our biggest opportunity of this approach based on Ingrid's kōrero, based on the mahi that we get to do, I think the reality is that if we are genuinely intentional about re-indigenizing our systems, this is the approach that has to be taken. Place-based is te ao Māori. If we go into our places and we surface the kōrero of our people, that is place-based, but we've got to start from that platform of recognising the mātauranga that exists. So that's probably the biggest opportunity that I will take away from today, that I've been juicing on as well through our mahi. But if we are intentional about re-indigenising our systems, place needs to be the approach. Kia ora tātou.
Tēnā koe, Rach. Ingrid, have you got anything that you'd like to share towards Rachel's kōrero? Still there?
I'm still here. Thank you. I really loved your kōrero, Rachel. Really, really grounding and important. And I think what you've shared around, looking at the opportunities and also approaching places from their strength and their context of what's working rather than what's not working gives us the starting point for so many opportunities that just don't come up in the discussion about which new shiny program shall we implement in which places. So yeah, thank you. Deep appreciation.
Tēnā koe, Ingrid. Awesome. Has anyone got any pātais that you'd like to ask Rach with regards to what has been shared this morning? Anyone got any pātai? I'll open the floor for about 30 seconds. No? Okay, we're going once.
Kia ora.
Yeah.
Kia ora, Nicola here. I'm interested, Rachel, in whether you see intersections with environmental management and connecting with other agencies and maybe mana whenua environmental management in your work more in the social sector.
Kia ora, kia ora. I mean, if we take that same whakaro of place-based as te ao Māori, hey, then absolutely there's intersections into the environmental space. We've got a really great prototype happening up here at the moment, actually, where there is a huge shift towards a place-based approach in the environmental space. But would be really keen and happy to connect you up with that mahi that's happening on the ground for you to understand what it's taking and what those challenges are. I think probably the biggest challenge that I could share on behalf of them is, again, that infrastructure thing. There is a cross-agency desire to be supporting mana whenua in particular in place. They just don't understand how to make that happen. They can't figure out how to make that work within the context of their system. So yes, is my answer to your pātai.
Tēnā koe. Is there anyone that would like to share any kōrero that was shared in the breakout groups, the 15-minute or 20-minute breakout groups that we had just before Rachel's kōrero that you'd like to share or like to talk to? Just giving a moment for everyone else there.
We've got Angie and Karakia with their Hands up,
Ka pai.
Didi.
Ka pai. We'll hand it over to Angie.
Well, I'm happy for Karakia to go if she wants to. I'll go after Karakia.
Oh, kia ora, Angie. Sorry, I lost sound for a second there, guys. Sorry about that. Look, I guess the kōrero that is something that is apparent to me and was reinforced by Rachel's kōrero is how if the data is telling us part of the, examining what we need and needing that granular data, then how is it that we are surfacing the question around what it is we're measuring? Because my experience has been that we measure things that are really important to the system, and we've got these KPIs and these outcomes and all of this stuff happening that matters to us in the juggernaut, but actually none of that is relevant to whānau. And so if we are using place as system, how is it that we are shifting toward measuring not necessarily that in isolation, but incorporating that into the measurements that matter?
Kia ora, Claudia.
Great partai e hoa, and I think that's just another illustration of how not fit for purpose our system is, hey, because when we think about resource flows and decision making, it is based on data, but that data is not fit for purpose, not just because of the granular detail. You're right, it's actually completely irrelevant to our whānau on the ground. So just to tautoko your partai, really, I don't have the answer to that, and collectively I think it's probably a good one that we can all be juicing on. And just a really great illustration of what needs to be shifting, hey.
Tēnā koe. Angie?
Oh, kia ora tātou. Oh, firstly, thanks so much, Rach. I couldn't be nodding more vigorously here from South Auckland. And also lovely to see you, Ingrid, and thank you for your kōrero. It's always inspiring. I had the same question as Karakia. I was wondering, we're in the same boat. And I know you guys have got some potential with Hikitea to do things differently. And I was just wondering, had you guys thought through any particular approaches about how you're gathering what matters most to whānau yet? Or are you guys still in the process of figuring it out as you're doing the mihi?
In the context of healthy families or in the context of Hikitea? Because I'm happy to chuck the rākau to Soph.
I see Soph's there. She never short of a thought. So if Soph's got some, yeah.
Kia ora tātou. I think that partai is about the potential of these two primary prevention kaupapa coming together. And you've got these two kaupapa. Hikitea is a new one funded by ACC and is in the primary prevention of family violence, sexual violence, whereas Healthy Families is in the primary prevention of chronic health conditions. And on the surface, those two look like very different kaupapa that should be kind of working in these siloed ways. But what we're hoping to do, and to answer your partai, Ange, we haven't figured it out yet, but is to really understand and learn what are the shared spaces, what are the shared outcomes, what are the shared protective factors and risks that sit inside of, not inside of these kaupapa, but in our world and in our context, and where are the places that we've got the opportunity to amplify because we've got this these two epic teams that can support that in our communities. So yeah, we haven't figured it out yet, but it this is a very small example of us leveraging these contracts from government and being able to work differently. So when we've figured it out, we might be able to kōrero more about it, but we're still very early in our journey, but that's the whakaro.
Tēnā koe, Sophia. Hey, look, I just wanted to say a big, huge. We'll close off for the morning. We've got more than we've actually asked for, and all very fortunate and lucky to have all the experts on this morning to share their insights, share their knowledge, share their experiences and what's happening in our spaces at the moment. So tuatahi, I'd like to thank Ingrid and Dr. Ingrid for joining us this morning to share your mātauranga Māori, followed by Rachel, e hoa e mihi ana ki a koe. Mo I whai wahi te nohotahi mai kia mātou I te rangi nei. I runga anō I te karanga o tā tātou papaho I te rangi nei. So Rachel, thank you very much for sharing your time and your experience this morning. I know it was not last minute, but I know you've lost some sleep over this, but we just wanted to acknowledge your time and everything that you've shared this morning. So, mihi ana ki wā tātou kai kōrero I te rangi nei. Tēnei ko te whaka manawa atu kia kaurua tahi. As mentioned, Jackie's completed illustration will be posted with today's recording in the next 2 weeks. And for you all to download, use and share. It will also be included in the invite to the next month's session. Please share feedback on the session. What did you like? What didn't you like? What was helpful? What was useful? Please put that in the chat if you're able to before you leave. But we've got a pānui for all participants. I just wanted to say a big thank you and acknowledgement for everyone sharing your time this morning. I know it's a rough time during this year, but e mihi ana kia koutou katoa ko whai wahi mai te ara mai nei. If you are new to the Practice Foundation and would like to receive any emails, invites to the next lot of sessions, please sign up via the Co-Design Labs website or by emailing the lab. Next month's session will be exploring a new iteration of Te Toko Toru. So for those that know Te Toko Toru, this will be a special one next month. Please come along. For those that are new, come along and learn and be open to learning Te Toko Toru. So we'll leave it at that, but e mihi ana kia tātou katoa ka kapi ake I tā tātou karakia I tēnei taima. Unuhia te uru tapunu kia wāte te hine ngaro te tirana te i te rā takatū. Hoia e rongo whakaira ki ngā pātu o tō tātou whare, ki o koutou kāinga, kia turuturu o utu kia turuturu, o whiti whakamaua kia tēnā, haumie, huie, tāi ki e.